Hello and welcome to Tech with Briley. Today we're going to continue working on our ChatGPT based retrieval augmented generation chat application. The source code is available here on GitHub with the MIT license. If you like any of the features of this application, feel free to fork that and build onto it your own ideas. We've got a few issues and a specific bug I've found, and in this session we're going to try to fix the bug. I'll show you what it looks like, and we're going to use a new feature on GitHub called Copilot Workspaces. I think I could fix it just by myself over here, but I'm getting to know this GitHub Workspaces, Copilot Workspaces. It's a pretty interesting feature, worth checking out, and it can be a great assistant. So our retrieval augmented generation, or RAG chat, essentially takes a small user input, retrieves some data from a vector store, and here's the example down here, and I'm exercising the bug here as well, and gets those some related contents out of the vector store that have been placed there to make the chat more specific in its purpose. This could be a knowledge base or some guidance for employees to do certain types of tasks, historical documents. In this case, I've got a prompt engineering guide, and we've split the text and embedded that and inserted it into a vector database. And now when I send it a small message, it's able to retrieve some of those results and send those to GPT to get a little bit better result. All right, and my debugger's running over here. So it's thinking about it for a moment, and it got a pretty good response. Give a bot a fish and teach a bot to fish. And if we look in the sources, and we can look at this raw source here, we have give a bot a fish and teach a bot to fish, results there. And our retrieval augmented generation chat application was able to summarize those. Give a bot a fish. This approach is for scenarios when you can explicitly provide the bot with all the necessary information in the hidden context to perform the requested task. And in a way, these retrieval augmented generative results, or these vector database results, they're hidden from the end user unless you show them. And actually, maybe, oh, there goes show and hide sources. And this is the bug we're going to fix here. The button is not really behaving correctly. I'll have to think about it closely, how to fix that. And then, so nonetheless, you got the results, and we're going to fix this bug. Now we have a bootstrap collapse. And that's essentially what we want to do. We want to show sources. And I can fix this in the code by following the bootstrap class collapse documentation. But I'm going to give Copilot Workspace a shot at this, and we're going to see how it works here. So what it's going to do is it reads the content of the issue. It's going to generate a specification, like an action plan a little bit, but high level than that. It's going to say how it should currently behaves and how it should behave. So it knows that the setup causes all source containers to toggle simultaneously rather than individually per message. So now it will say each message will toggle independently using Bootstrap's collapse feature. BS data target is updated to reference the unique IDs. Custom JavaScript for toggling sources is removed. We don't really need that probably. And documentation in README now includes a section on how sources. We probably don't need that. So what we can do is say, yeah, don't worry about that one. Tests ensure that clicking on a source toggle button affects only the intended messages sources. This is interesting. So it's going to write a test for that, and so far we don't have. We only have a user, we only have, unit tests, and we don't have any user interface tests. So I'm not sure what it's going to do to test that. Let's see. Let's let it generate the plan. So in a way, it's actually generating a plan that's better than I would have thought to do. Okay, so now it's analyzing the plan. We're going to update that. We're going to use the Jinja 2 template, and we're going to remove that code for toggling the source visibility in our script. We're going to make sure we generate unique IDs for each message. And these unique IDs just could be the timestamp from my perspective. They don't need to be any kind of persistent identifier or just a UUID. Unix timestamp would be fine. Add unit tests to verify each message source is toggle independently. So this is, I'm curious how to do unit tests here. Because normally that would be sort of a an automated browser-based test to test like DOM interaction, using like Selenium or something like that. We don't need to document this, and I'll just remove those requirements or just uncheck that. What I'm going to do while I'm thinking of this, we don't really want to go into Selenium there, or even like Storybook, or what's the other one that we're using there? It's not Storybook, but there's some similar. So yeah, we can just test the output contains those bootstrap toggles. The problem is you have to send it an initial chat message. So what I can do is update the specification. I keep almost remembering the dang Python. See if it comes to me. Not Selenium. There's another one that's becoming more common. Playwright. This is essentially a form of prompting. But it might be out of scope, but let's take a look. At the proposed changes here. Yeah, so it simplified our markup a bit here. Just cleaning up the markup a little bit. It wasn't really called for to do that, but okay, sometimes you do that when you're working on something. Okay, so it is going to use UUID. Yeah, that makes sense. And it's just going to generate a UUID for each container. Now it's totally removing this script. Now that's not good. So we'll have to revise that file. So the UUID thing works. Interesting. That's a weird test case. All right, well, let's see if we can get it to. So it's really messing that one up. So this is nice. You can steer it and give it feedback. So it's like a really active peer review. It's doing most of the coding for me. It needs a little hand-holding like these models do, but they're essentially pretty good at being assistants. Okay, let's see. So now it removed just the correct one and left a line of code here. So all of our HTMX listeners are still good there. And these HTMX ones, actually, we might be able to refactor this to use HTMX swap. Get rid of all the JavaScript. And this is a bit of a sort of anti-pattern. We don't need to necessarily define a variable here, but yeah, okay, we'll go with that. Yeah, so now let's create I can open this in a code space. Interesting. So let's open it in a code space. I want to run this unit test. We can see how it behaves. If I create a pull request, so I can actually pull the changes down locally, and I've already got a vector database. But to run the test, it should just work because it's always going to show the sources toggle, even if there are no sources. That would be an enhancement where we could disable that in the cases where there aren't any sources. All right, so it looks like by default the code spaces doesn't install the dependency. It's perhaps going to do that to give it a little bit of time to get set up. I haven't defined in our project any code spaces file, but it knows to run our Python version from here, 3.10. So, and it does know to install the dependencies, and it's trying to cache them, so that's kind of good. Interesting. So this is a pretty new workflow on GitHub. The GitHub Copilot workspace is in preview right now, and these general Copilot workspaces have been around for a while, but we're integrating these more into the open source work, for example. So it makes it real easy for people to get set up with the development environment, no matter what operating system on there are or how powerful their computer is. We can get a workspace set up and running the project. It is a bit slow. And honestly, one task I have to set up is to create a CI pipeline that will run our PyTest tests. And it should run lint, and it's sort of, it's an LLM output, so it's not actually running this code or validating it. This is just sort of, very good hallucination. But let's go ahead and create a pull request here. And I'll just run this locally and try it out. So in this case, if this solution works, I think this is, it's only taken about, let's say 15 minutes after a little bit of 5 minutes of introduction and everything. This is actually a time saver because it's written the unit test. It's found a bug. It identified the right line to change and the way to generate the UUID. It just needed a little bit of coaching. So that's common in peer review when we're doing peer review for humans as well. So now we can hop over here. And it's in fixed sources toggle. So if I just bring up GitHub, pull request, make sure we're on the main branch, pulled everything in, but I need to refresh these. Oh no, that's correct. That's the correct one. So we'll check that one out. I can close these files and stop the debugger for just a moment. So it's showing me 4 files changed. And what we want to do is just run the PyTest. All right. Module not found app.main. Okay, so then we just have to take a closer look at the test because I kind of expected it not to work. It's hallucinated. And yeah, it did see that. Removed unused import. So that's a good one. And so yeah, this one would be chat.main import app. And it is actually chat. Sorry, app.chat. Main would be a good one. More conventional, probably. Now we'll run that again. And it fails. This is an interesting one. I don't have my tests set up correctly. No. So the problem is, these tests have worked before. So there's that. There's an empty init py. Oh. Sorry, misread that. So this is breaking imports in my chat, in my application. I mean, this app chat, line 10. No, the conf test is not going to work. So this isn't necessarily specifically about the issue, but more that the tests are flaky and I haven't set them up correctly. So this is something I would have to battle in any case. Goodness. like to do a Python not being able to resolve the import paths correctly. Gosh. I tried this. I did /app, so maybe that's the difference. Like it resolves it here. I can go to definition. So that's so weird that PyTest can't do this. For example, let me just I'm going to disable sorcery. It's just noise at this point. I mean, this is an ideal architecture, like just file structure that the apps would be separated. We're just going in circles. We're chasing our tail here. Why is this? So that worked for this test. All right. Test chat GPT. Import. App is here. It's a collision. Take a quick break while this is renaming, or let me cancel. Let me try it one more time. There it goes. Did it rename? Did it work? Imported but unused, but maybe at least it'll not do this. So it's able to import that. I can go to definition. It's there. I don't want to change my Python path. And it's just for this one. Test main. It's called main.py, so you know. All right. So here the GPT was actually a lot more helpful. Yeah, we'll fix that. All right. So it does exist, but there's something else. Man, that is glitchy. I just want to read and not have this jittery completion. Here we go. Yeah, that'll clear it up. So turning file static. All right, we'll do that. Yeah, it's an improvement anyway, because we're creating a variable and using a hard-coded string, and that should work better. All right, cool. Good golly. All right, so that took about a half hour to get the tests working, but this was an important improvement. So then let's see if they work. And I think I can use my Python tests laboratory here. But gotta fix that. Line flow tests, and we'll run test. Well, let's just run test ChatGPT thing. That works. And we got one test in here, and so this is an underlying error. So it's using the app. That's correct. Ah, templates, not template response. So we're overwriting it there. Okay. Yeah. All right. Now we got an insertion. Okay, so good. We had to clean up the way we define things using OS path instead of absolute values, string literals, basically. That's a gotcha. All right, and then our insertion failed. So hey, it's progress. So now let's hop over to Claude and see if we can get some help with our test. Nice. All right. So debugging a bit more. This test won't run in the CI though, because it's making an actual call to the LLM. this is where a class might be helpful, because I can mock this whole class and we can use dependency injection. We'll need to, yeah, this is going to be actually a pretty tricky test case, because we're essentially doing an integration test and we want to actually mock the large language model and we want to mock the retrieval augmented generation, like the Chroma DB or the underlying vector store. We don't need to test that layer. So we can basically mock the RAG service, and essentially we should have a service here, bot service. And then somehow these would be globally configurable. What underlying bot we are using will have a common interface, of course. Yeah. So there's definitely some architectural improvements here. I just want to get this test to work. I don't know if an LLM is necessarily the only one, but right now we're using the LLM. There's multimodal models, and some we might be using at some point diffusion models. So anyway. Okay, so here we are going to define, we're monkey patching. All right. But it looks good. It was generated fast. And we still have, I think we still have an underlying issue. I can just name it main. It's conventional to call it main. That's where our main app is defined. So of course, let's see, that breaks. I don't think we're importing anything that would be circular imports. All right, so let's go to test main anyway. Save that mock. Go over to the test suite. Yeah, this is a pretty difficult test. All right, but at least so we have empty IDs. Sources dash. So it could be a legit bug. You know, we're not getting something. Out. So basically the app needs to change. So the test is actually working. It's highlighting a bug. Very cool. All IDs found. Cool. So as far as I can understand, we just need to modify the way we're generating the IDs. We were using a UUID4, and the test has uncovered a legitimate bug in the code. Oh, cool. All right. So all that work that will exercise the bug and avoid that in the future. Let's see here then. So we have to stringify it. So if we go to the chat, which is now the chat endpoint, which is now in main, and essentially right before we render the response, we're generating the message ID. And then we're gonna, I see. So we'll just do that again. This is like a bit too descriptive. It's describing what's otherwise self-explanatory. Same here. This is pretty self-explanatory also. But our bot template now needs to be updated as well. The bot message. Now if we run our test again. They pass. Wow. Now we will manually exercise the bug. Oh my gosh. No, this is actually to be expected. So I just need to fix my run time because I renamed it. Load the main app. This is another problem. Might be if I just do that. This is kind of a weird one. That's weird if that works. No. What I'm going to do is this. All right, so we're just going to use the current working directory, which that should be the default, but okay, if it's not, that's fine. app.main.app, launch ubicorn, debug pi, reload ginger true. Okay, try one more time. Gotta have this debugger. It's just, it's a lifesaver. All right, and these chats are super helpful. It's just such a lifesaver. All right. That's great. Prompt engineering is a valuable skill. Toggle. All right, it's not bad, and then the thing comes in there. Very cool. What does it mean for an LLM to fish? That one stays open, which is expected. This one toggles, this one untoggles, and they're both separate. Yep, and we can see our sources. Oh, yes, excellent. So great work. It took about an hour, but we have a new feature. We fixed a bug, that is, and we have our tests and everything running. The debugger's running correctly. The tests are all running correctly. It's actually been the code only took a little bit to run with the help of GitHub Copilot workspaces, but we had to work out some issues with the tests with the help of a couple large language models. We got Claude over here and helping us write the tests and improve them a little bit, and then ChatGPT helping to carry it across the line. I mean, it's like, I don't know which one is like superior. They're both bringing in different abilities, and I think GPT is a little bit better with some of the contextual knowledge, but maybe we can get the similar results with about environment and Python development and things like that. Although Claude has an excellent understanding of the code, and has made this project completely possible to do in a weekend. The thing is, now we're going to some local changes we're going to commit. All right, wait, fixed a legitimate bug. Two bugs, actually. First was the bug that the things were not behaving correctly. They weren't opening up. They were all opening up at once. And then when we fixed that bug, we introduced a new one where essentially, the IDs weren't being populated correctly, so it wasn't a complete fix. Wow. It's been a good session, though. So I pushed these changes directly to the branch. In the pull request. Adding a unique class to the button. You would usually do that with an ID. Adding an edge case for multiple messages. I'm going to turn off sorcery. That one's outdated. That one's outdated, outdated. Let's merge. That's fine. All right, we're gonna do a recap real quick, showing our changes, how we did them with the help of Copilot Workspace. The specific bug changes, how we made them, will demonstrate the application behaving correctly now. Great, good stuff. All right, I'm going to do this outro real quick. Be right back. Welcome to a recap of today's live code hangout. Today we've been working on our open source retrieval augmented generation chat application using FastAPI. We had identified a bug when we retrieve texts. We want to show the user what documents were retrieved in the chat flow. And there was a bug that the sources toggles were all kind of opening at the same time. But basically, we've trained this bot on some documents about prompt engineering. We haven't trained it, we've actually just inserted those into a vector database, and in the process of chatting, we're retrieving those from the database and inserting them into the prompt. So it augments what I'm asking with hopefully relevant results from a vector database. But in order to know a little bit more what's going on behind the scene, we have this sources toggle on each of the responses. So we can say, okay, when I asked the question about what does it mean for LLM to fish, we got the answer about teaching a bot to fish that actually came directly from the source documents. And here are the sources it retrieved, from this document available on GitHub. And you can give a bot to fish, or teach a bot to fish. So it's retrieving the sources and the text. Now this is just truncated, but it's actually retrieving pretty large slices of text. So the whole idea is we have a little bit more transparency about what's going on behind the scene, but the sources are different for each response. So the toggle button should behave separately. And prior to this session, when I toggled one, they were all toggling because we didn't have a unique identifier. So we were able to fix that. Let's take a look at how. It was pretty fun and challenging at the same time. The pull request is not too long, but the process of fixing the bug actually uncovered several issues with this project, the configuration. So we needed to make changes to our launch for debugging. We needed to make a few changes to our settings for our test assistant. Those are all VS Code things. For people who are not using VS Code, it won't matter so much. But we also needed to fix our imports to use the app namespace, as well as using OS path join instead of basically string literals for our paths. This is probably something we should have done initially, but it got us during this pull request, so we've improved that in the process of fixing the bug. And the other aspect that's more related to the bug fix is that for every response that we're sending back to the user, when you send a chat message, it retrieves the documents and kind of concatenates those into your prompt or your request, along with a system message, and it sends all of those to ChatGPT and gets a response. And for each response, we're just kind of adding a UUID so that we have a message ID, and this will get rendered into the template. This is more just fixes of the imports and cleaning up some JavaScript that was actually buggy and unnecessary, where we had some manual event handlers here. We're very light on the JavaScript in this app. We're using HTMX, and that handles most of it for us. And Bootstrap, which gives us nice baseline mobile responsive UI components that are well maintained and under continual development, including interactive elements like the toggle. So all we had to do to get the toggle to work was give an ID instead of having this generic ID that appears on all of the sources, and that way we couldn't toggle any particular one. It was toggling them all. Each sources will have this message ID, and that was that UUID we generated up here. So each source's table there, if we inspect it, it's going to toggle sources and then this UUID, and then we have this is the table or the div for those sources with the same UUID. So that's basically all we need to do. It's declarative code in the template, and Bootstrap handles the JavaScript for us. So we're again trying to be real lean on the JavaScript, not anti-JavaScript, but just adding it where you need it, and you can get quite far and even have a dynamic, user interface using HTMX. And with toggling elements, large language models don't have personal preference or taste because they're not sentient beings. They process and generate text based on patterns and information from the data they were trained on. So while they can provide information about fish tacos, generate recipes, or even discuss their popularity, they don't have the capability to like or dislike anything. Man, that's kind of a bummer. I like fish tacos. And basically, the rest of it was just writing tests. And again, all this code was kind of generated for me by a prompt. And I'll show you more or less how the prompting works. And I was in the loop here, though. It wasn't fully automated. And I believe that is kind of the future of how we're going to work with these tools. At least it's the present reality for me, is you have to stay in the loop and engage and steer it along the way. And frankly, I like that. It's quite interesting. It's definitely augmenting my abilities. It's helping me solve problems much faster and in ways that, were beyond my capabilities in a lot of cases. So I'm glad to have these. And here's the new test. We won't go into too much detail about the test. I think it's more interesting to see how the process worked. So it started with an issue, which I also generated with Claude over here, somewhere up in this conversation we've been having. And I gave Claude some basic information about the bug, and it generated this whole issue with objective to modify the sources toggle functionality so that it works independently for each chat message using Bootstrap's built-in collapse without additional JavaScript. It gave a pretty good description of the problem based on only a minimal amount of prompting from me. If I can get up here to it. But this conversation's been quite lengthy in terms of debugging tests, tweaking. See, that's where I was working on the dark mode. We fixed that. Here we go. So here's my prompt. It says, I'm using GitHub Copilot. Oh, right. No. I did it before the dark mode one. Implement Bootstrap dark mode. Well, I should have had this prepared before the summary, but here it is. I noticed that the button in the chat that toggles the hidden sources unhides all the sources in the conversation when clicked, not just the sources for that specific message. The query selector attached to these DOM items is probably too general. Likewise, we shouldn't actually need any lines of JavaScript to get the Bootstrap collapse to work, since it just needs a unique identifier on the HTML. And I kind of pasted this in from the docs, because really all the Bootstrap needs is just data Bootstrap toggle to say, hey, this is going to collapse something, and you tell it what the target is, and the CSS selector there. And then you just define the element that collapses with that same CSS selector. The key is it has to be unique on the page, or every element with that ID should be unique, but every element that matches that CSS selector will be collapsed. So you could technically collapse multiple items. So that was my prompt, very minimal, but based on the conversation history and the project that I've been working on with Claude here, it gave me a very thorough prompt. And that's what I was after, is to have the LLM generate the prompt for the LLM, because they're inherently better at writing than me with guidance. And then I revised it a little bit, but it was very specific and even included implementation details and acceptance criteria. And I reviewed this all. You want to be careful and make sure that you're getting good output. But the thing is, then once you have a bug related to number 10, we will be able to work on, you can say, open in workspace, and that's what brings you into this Copilot workspace, which is in preview right now. And from that, it analyzed the issue and it generates a specification. And it starts with the premise. Does clicking the sources toggle button only show or hide the sources for that specific message using Bootstrap's collapse feature without custom JavaScript? So that's good. You have like a very concrete, almost a hypothesis you can test, and it checks that. No, it doesn't currently work like that. So it proposes some changes. And these were all, I didn't have to modify these, I think. These are all just, were good. So it proposed the solution and even included tests, which I knew was going to be a bit of a tricky situation, but not in the ways actually that it was truly tricky in terms of getting all of our testing environment set up. Nonetheless, so that's the specification. Once I approved that, it started in on the plan for very specific changes to the exact files and the strategy. And this plan I did revise a little bit, and I was thinking maybe we would use Playwright or something like that. But we don't want to have a UI testing framework like Selenium, and even Playwright's probably too much. And the solution it landed on was actually just right. So testing with the test client and checking the response HTML. So it looked pretty good. Once you had the plan, and we did a couple of iterations on that, it went to the implementation stage, and it made all these changes. And then I've subsequently made some changes to that. So we opened a pull request and essentially ran a few iterations on the pull request. We've already reviewed the code here. But when the pull request was initially opened, it was incomplete. We got a bunch of sorcery spam. I'm going to have to just turn that service off. It's just too noisy. So this took about 4 more commits working with ChatGPT and Claude. But overall, I think I can't stress how useful these tools have been in terms of making this project possible. To develop this in a couple of days from scratch, mostly not using any other frameworks aside from FastAPI, but not using any. I'm not using currently LangChain or anything, although I'm not opposed to using that. But I've just been focusing in on the aspects of this project that are make it unique and that are currently essential for the minimum viable prototype. So yeah, this has been a bit of an epic session and a long summary of the live coding hangout today. But if you're interested in this project, you can check out the source on GitHub. If you'd like to contribute, we do have several issues that are tagged here as good first issue. So contributions are gladly accepted. If you want to try the project and you encounter any problems, feel free to open a discussion. I'll try to help you out there. And, you know, of course, it's open source, so you can make use of it in any way for whatever you're building. Okay, well, thanks for your time. I hope you're doing well, and have a great day.